A doctor said to his patient, "I have some bad news and I have some terrible news for you." The patient said, "Well, what's the bad news?" The doctor said, "Well, the test results came in and you only have 24 hours to live." The patient was stunned. He said, "What could be worse than that?" The doctor said, "I was supposed to have told you yesterday." You know, all of us face uncertain futures, don't we? And that's the thought that James has in mind about why we should live without presumption in our lives. The book of James is a book about how to know if you're really saved or not. Where there is faith, there will be visible fruit. And one test of whether or not we are truly Christians is if we're becoming more godly. Last time we looked at a checklist for godliness. And you may remember that to become godly, James gave us 3 keys. First of all, submit to God by resisting the devil. Secondly, draw near to God by purifying your heart. And then third, he talked about humbling yourself before God. And that's where we left off last time. In James 4:10, humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you. What does that mean, to humble yourselves? Remember, I referred to comedian Chevy Chase, his signature line at the beginning of his skit. He always began by saying, "Hi, I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not." Well, that's a real illustration of how we humble ourselves before God. We say, "God, I realize you're God, and I'm not." Now, that means more than just intellectually agreeing that you're not God. If you really understand that you and I are not God, we will refrain from 2 specific actions that attempt to usurp God's power and authority. First of all, James is going to say, if we're going to humble ourselves before God, we must stop judging other people. Listen to verse 11 and 12. "Do not speak out against one another, brethren, for he who speaks out against a brother or judges his brother speaks against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you're not a doer of the law, but a judge of it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor?" Now, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what James is saying and what he's not saying. I read a survey not long ago that said for years, the favorite verse of Americans, Christian and non-Christian alike, the favorite Bible verse was, can you remember what it was? Would you like to guess? For years, it's been John 3:16. Remember those guys who would hold up John 3:16 signs at football games? Everybody quoted John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes in him would not perish but have everlasting life." But that verse has been replaced as America's favorite verse. You know what America's favorite verse is now? Matthew 7:1. "Judge not, lest ye be judged." People don't have a clue what that means. They think in this anything-go culture, it's a blanket pardon for anything you want to do. They treat that verse like a king's ex. If you dare question their activities, they say, "Oh, judge not, judge not, judge not, lest ye be judged." But was Jesus really saying we're never to make any discerning statement or any evaluation of another person? No. A closer analysis of what Jesus meant is found in verses 1 to 5 of Matthew 7. Hold your place in James 4 and turn over to Matthew 7. Remember, Jesus was James' older brother, and it explains why James quotes Jesus' Sermon on the Mount more than any other New Testament book. Look what Jesus really said about judging. "Do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged." By the way, circle that line, way. It's not judging, it's the way you judge. "You will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite! First, take the log out of your own eye, and then, circle that, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. What James is saying, and Jesus both, is don't engage in ungodly judging, an ungodly type, a wrong type of judging. He's not saying don't judge at all, but guard against ungodly judging. What is that? First of all, ungodly judging usurps God's authority to pronounce condemnation. It's usurping only God's right to pronounce condemnation. That word judge in Greek is the word krino, K-R-I-N-O. It is a condemning type of judgment. It's a judgment that says, here is the final verdict on this person. What they've done is unforgivable. They are beyond forgiveness. They are a person who are beyond redemption. James says, you can't pronounce that kind of judgment. Only God knows that. The fact is, there's sometimes that it's the right thing to do to judge another person. It's a loving thing to do. And he uses this illustration. If you see somebody with a speck in their eye, their eyes watering and they can't open it and they're obviously in discomfort, the merciful thing to do is help them remove that speck.